Myself Dr. Megha, Assistant Professor in School of Legal Studies, K.R. Mangalam University. In today's session, we will be dealing with the concept of negligence under law of torts. We will discuss about the meaning, essentials and various defenses that are available against negligence in torts. Let's come to the meaning of negligence. So, whenever word negligence comes in our mind, in a general sense, we take it as carelessness. Yes, it means carelessness, but that is in general sense. As far as the legal sense is concerned, it signifies the failure to exercise a standard of care, which a person requires, which a reasonable man requires that he should have exercised in a particular situation. This word negligence is derived from the Latin word negligentia, which means failing to pick up. So, if in a particular situation a reasonable standard of care is required from a person, and if he fails to take that particular care, then he will be considered to be negligent in that particular situation. So, we can say absence of any intention to cause harm is one of the essential in negligence, because if intention is there, if the person is intending to cause harm to anyone, it cannot be negligent act. It will be considered as intentional act. This term negligence, if we are making a person responsible for a negligent act, it includes careless or unreasonable conduct. That means he is not taking proper care in doing that act, he is not taking proper care in handling a thing, then we will say he is negligent. If he is intentionally doing that thing in a wrong way, then it will be a malified act, it will not be a negligent act. But if this unreasonable conduct is without damage, then it is not actionable. For making an act actionable, for making a negligent act actionable, damage should be there, a loss should be there. So, negligent means a mental element, that means that is a state of mind. A person is not taking proper care, he is recklessly doing that thing, then again that is considered as a negligent act, and negligence is considered as an independent tort. So, negligence can be made punishable, a person can be made liable for negligence in two ways. One, as an independent tort, that he is doing certain act negligently, then he will be liable for negligence as an independent tort, and doing certain act in which negligence is an essential thing. So, it includes in a particular act as well as it will be considered as an independent tort. Let us take some forms of negligence. There are three forms which we consider as negligence: nonfeasance, misfeasance and malfeasance. So, nonfeasance is something when a person have to do something but he fails to do that thing. This is called nonfeasance. So, failure to do something that should have been done is considered as nonfeasance. For example, not repairing an old building when repairs are needed. So, whenever there is a building which requires certain kind of repairment, but that is not being done, this is called nonfeasance. And if any wrong is happen, then the person who is responsible to take care the repairing of that building will be responsible for nonfeasance, he will be considered as negligent. Then second one is misfeasance. It means that the person is responsible for doing certain act, he is doing that act, but he is not doing that act properly. So, doing an act in an improper manner, that means misfeasance, and the person shall be responsible for negligence. For example, the same thing, the person is having responsibility for repairing a building, but he is using poor quality material, he is not doing his job in a proper and legible manner, then again he will be considered as negligent. And malfeasance, which means the person has to do something, but he is not doing that thing at all. That is also considered as negligent thing. For example, using combustible banned product in repair, turning the building into fire trap, that is considered as malfeasance. Let's take an illustration to elaborate negligence in a more clear way. For example, there is a person Z, an owner of a big dog, who requests his friend X to take care of his dog while he is away. X leaves the dog unattended, who attack a person and cause injury to him. So, here in this act, X shall be responsible for negligence because he has been assigned with the duty to take care of the dog. Dog is very big, he may bite someone, but that person is negligent in handling that dog properly, and ultimately that dog caused injuries to someone. So, the answer would be X will be responsible for negligence in handling that dog. There are two theories that deals with negligence. One is propounded by Salmond and another one is propounded by Pollack. Salmond's theory is named as subjective theory, which deals with state of mind, and according to him, negligence is something that deals with state of mind. And state of mind is something that may vary from person to person, and there will be liability that is only for intentional act because it deals with state of mind. And if the person has acted to best ability, that he is taking proper care, proper diligence, then there will be no negligence that can be put on that person. On the contrary, the theory of Pollack, that is named as objective theory, according to him, negligence is equivalent to conduct. There is nothing to do with the state of mind, and this conduct is measured by standard of a reasonable man, that how much care a reasonable man can take in that particular situation, that will be considered as a non-negligent thing. A conduct will decide whether that person will be negligent in that particular situation or not. Now, let us take some differences between criminal and civil negligence, because negligence is the person is responsible for negligence in both the areas of law, either it's civil law or criminal law, and in both situations the person is having different kind of liability. So, I am taking the differences as far as nature of conduct is concerned, degree of negligence is concerned, and in relation to burden of proof. So, in nature of conduct, civil negligence means the failure to exercise ordinary care or due diligence. But in criminal negligence, it is extreme and rash conduct, showing a gross departure from how a reasonable person would act. So, as far as nature is concerned, civil negligence is not that much grave, but criminal negligence is very extreme and rash conduct. Degree of negligence, civil negligence is having lesser degree, and criminal negligence is having the high degree, where the conduct is significantly reckless or dangerous. In civil negligence, burden of proof, as far as burden of proof is concerned, it is based on balance of probabilities. It may or may not be considered as negligence, it depends upon the reasonable man's standard of care. But in criminal negligence, it requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and it is the rule of interpretation in criminal jurisprudence that whenever a person is to be made liable for any criminal liability, the burden of proof is on the prosecution to prove the guilt of accused beyond reasonable doubt. If there is a slight doubt, the benefit of doubt shall go to the accused. So, same in the case of negligence, if the prosecution is saying that accused is negligent, then he has to prove that fact beyond reasonable doubt, but that kind of thing is not there in civil negligence. If damage is there because of the negligence of one person, then he has to compensate the aggrieved party. Then in relation to punishment, In case of civil negligence, punishment is only in the form of compensation, whereas in criminal negligence, it may involve imprisonment or fines or probations. So, here the punishments are severe. If we say the example, in civil negligence we can say if the housekeeper forgets to place a wet floor sign, then it is a civil negligence, that he is negligent in putting that warning that floor is wet and you may slip, and the person slips and he suffered any kind of injury, then it will be considered as civil negligence on the part of servant. But if a person is driving negligently and he hits someone and because of that it results in fatal injury, then it will be considered as criminal negligence and it will be resulted into the punishments. As far as relevant laws is concerned, civil negligence is dealt by law of tort that we are discussing right now, and criminal negligence is dealt by our previous code, that is IPC, Indian Penal Code, and now with Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Let's take a leading case that elaborate negligence in a very fine way, that is the case of Dongo versus Stevenson. It is a case of 1932. In this case, A purchased a bottle of ginger beer from a retailer for the appellant, who is his lady friend. Some of the content were poured into a tumbler and she consumed the same. When the remaining content of the bottle were poured into her tumbler, a decomposed body of a snail floated out with her ginger beer. And before pouring the remaining content of that beer, she consumed that beer and she suffered health injury. She said that bottle was of dark opaque glass enclosed with a metal cap, so that content could not be ascertained by inspection, because it was contended that you must have seen that snail beforehand and now you are complaining. But she said that glass was opaque and that was closed with a metal cap, so she was not able to inspect the content of that bottle. So, she bought an action against the manufacturer for that damage. Here in this case, manufacturer claimed no duty of care towards consumer. He said on the contrary that it is the retailer who is responsible for this negligence. He should be aware that what is the content there in the bottle, and while he is serving that content to some consumer, then it is the responsibility of that retailer to check the content. He excuses his liability and claimed that he is not having any kind of duty of care towards consumer. But the court held that manufacturer owed a duty of care to ultimate consumer. What was the reason? Lord Aitken's neighbor principle. The principle that was evolved in this case was considered as Lord Aitken's neighbor principle, and according to this, it was observed that a manufacturer of products which he sells in such a form as to show that he intends them to reach the ultimate consumer. Obviously, if any such kind of content is being produced, then the ultimate thought of the manufacturer is not to put that thing in the possession of retailer only, but his ultimate intention that that product should reach to some consumer, and that was same in that case. So, if a manufacturer is having that intention that this product should reach to the ultimate consumer, he owes a duty to the consumer to take that reasonable care. And because of this principle, court held manufacturer liable for the damage that is caused to that lady. The significance of this judgment was that negligence was viewed as a conduct, not merely a state of mind. So, we can say the theory, objective theory that was propounded by Pollock was adopted in this case. Established duty of care and neighbor's principle in tort of law, that was also considered in this case, and liability involves considering duty, care, causation and remoteness of damage. These were few things that were established by this judgment. Now, through this case, we can identify certain essentials of negligence. I have make a flow like negligence that is equivalent to duty of care. Duty of care, if there is a breach of that duty, then that breach, and if that breach cause damage, then that will be considered as negligence. So, it includes certain things like there must be a duty of care, then there must be a breach of that duty, and that breach is causing damage, then ultimately it will result to negligence. So, essentials we can say, first one is duty to take care, second one is duty must be towards plaintiff. General duty doesn't come under negligence. In tort, as we have discussed this also, that tort is considered as right in persona, where it is towards an individual. So, duty must be towards plaintiff, it cannot be a general duty. Then there will be a breach of duty and then consequent damage to the plaintiff. So, these are the four essentials for making a person liable for negligence. Let us take these essentials one by one. First one is duty to take care. There is a question, did the defendant owe duty to take care or avoid the harm to the claimant? If there is no duty to take care, still whether that person can be made liable towards the claimant, that answer would be no. Unless and until there is a duty to take care, in the absence of a duty to take care, no claim will arise, no matter the carelessness of the defendant. So, unless and until the person is having that duty to take care towards claimant, towards plaintiff, that person cannot be made liable howsoever he is careless. There are two types of duty to take care. First one is established duty of care. The examples are doctor and patient, employer and employee, teacher and student, where we can say that person is having duty to take care towards another person. For example, in the case of doctor and patient, doctor is obliged to take ultimate care towards his patient to cure his health. Same, employer is having ultimate duty of taking care towards his employee to provide that safe and healthy environment to work in, and same we can say in the case of teacher and student. Second one is novel duty situations, where the question that whether a duty of care exists is not answered by precedents. It requires reasonable foresight and sufficient proximity. Now, what is this reasonable foresight and sufficient proximity of relationship between the claimant and defendant? Let's discuss this with the help of few case laws. First one is proximity, which means the person must be having some kind of relationship. There is a case to decide the meaning of proximity. Caparo Industries versus Dickman, it is the case of 1990. The Caparo Industries had purchased shares in Fidelity and placing reliance on a firm of accountant's report had bought further shares. So, they have just put a reliance on some accountant report that this company is having very good share and you can put reliance on it and can purchase the shares. But that report was subsequently proved to have given false pictures of F's profits and thereby C suffered a loss. That company, Caparo, brought an action against the auditors claiming they were negligent in certifying the accounts. Here in this case held that auditors didn't owe a duty of care to the claimant, as not all three factors of a novel duty situations were satisfied. What are these three situations? Let's move back to that slide. It is reasonable foresight, sufficient proximity, and fair, just and reasonable to impose a duty. And in that case, it was established that auditors are not falling within all of these three factors. Neither it's having reasonable foresight, nor a proximity, nor a fair, just and reasonable. Everyone do everything to survive in their business. that is not harmful for somebody else. So if one person is investing in a company, they have to make their own inquiries, and if they are blindly relying on the auditor's report, that is their fault. They cannot put the blame of negligence on the auditors. And further, it was held they owed no duty to the public at large who might place reliance on the company's account when making investment decisions. So in this case, it was held that auditors are not liable for negligence towards the company. Then second one is forcibility. It was explained in the case of Borhill versus Young, case of 1943. In this case, the claimant heard a collision between a motorcycle and a car and walked to the scene. She didn't see the accident, but she saw blood on the road and claimed she suffered shock and a miscarriage as a result. She claimed damages against the estate of the dead motorcyclist whose carelessness has caused the accident. So ultimately, she claimed for nervous shock. She didn't see the accident, she just saw the blood, she got a nervous shock, she had a miscarriage, and ultimately she claimed damages from the estate of motorcyclist. Again, it was held that there was no duty of care owed. His only duty of care, the dead motorcyclist, he is having only duty of care was on the road. He could not have anticipated that somebody would come, somebody would saw the blood, and then it would happen. So if it was involved in an accident, it would have caused this. Then move to the second essential. The duty must be towards the plaintiff, as I have stated earlier also, that this duty is not towards the public at large. This duty must be towards the plaintiff, and if plaintiff suffered any loss, then he would be entitled for the damages. So a duty arises when the law recognizes a relationship between the defendant and the plaintiff, and it requires the defendant to act in a certain manner. This must be specific, not general, as we have discussed in the case of Borhill versus Young in the previous slide, where the plaintiff suffered shock from the accident that is unseen by her. No duty, no damages. Then third essential is breach of duty to take care. If there is a duty, that duty is towards plaintiff, then there must be a breach. If there is a breach of that duty, then the person shall be liable for the same. And for that, plaintiff must prove that there was a breach of that duty. The person has failed to exercise reasonable care in that particular situation. And this breach means non-observance of a standard of care that is expected from a prudent person. For example, in the case of Municipal Corporation of Delhi versus Subhagwanti, it is a leading case in this point. The case is of 1966. A very old clock tower that is situated right in the middle of Chandni Chowk suddenly collapsed, causing the death of many people. The clock tower was 80 years old, although the normal lifespan of these kind of clock towers should have been between 40 to 45 years. But it was of 80 years old and was not maintained by the Municipal Corporation of Delhi. So they had duty of care towards the citizen, and by ignoring to repair that clock tower, they were negligent in their act, and thereby they were held responsible for the loss. Now, what is standard of care? This standard of care can be ascertained by the importance of the object to be attained. So sometimes there are some risks that are involved, and the person is permitted in taking some chances, some measures of risk, so that in public interest various kinds of activities should go on. For example, if all the trains in the country, we all know what could be the speed of a train. If all the trains in the country were restricted to a speed of 5 miles an hour, there would be fewer accidents. But what would be the result to the Indian economy, the nation's life? That would be intolerably slower down. So the purpose to be served, if sufficiently important, justifies the assumption of the abnormal risk. So here standard of care may vary. Then second is magnitude of risk. Again, the degree of care requires various according to each situation, it may vary to situation to situation. What may be a careful act in one situation, that may be a careless act in another situation. So, the negligent act should be decided according to the situations. Then, amount of consideration for which service are offered. Again, this degree of care depends on the kind of service offered by the defendant and the consideration charged. If we are paying 10 or 25 paise for a drinking water, we may expect that it should not ordinarily infect us. But if we are spending much more amount, then we will demand a higher degree of purity. So, this is how the standard of care should be decided. Now, there is a term res ipsa loquitur, which decide this negligence, which means the thing speaks for itself. It's a kind of circumstantial evidence where the things can be decided on the basis of the situations around that. It arose out of the case of Bain versus Bordel. Three essentials for this maxim, like the thing causing the damage must be under the control of the defendant. The accident must be such as would not have happened in the ordinary course of things, and there must be no evidence of the actual cause of the accident. Then this maxim is having application. Now, in last, we will discuss the defenses in negligence. First one is contributory negligence, that is based on the maxim of voluntae non fit injuria, where the person defendant is also contributing towards, where the plaintiff is also contributing in the negligence. So, he cannot say that the defendant is negligent, because defendant is also having the defense that plaintiff is negligent. So, contributory negligence is a defense in negligence. Then second one is act of God. In the act of God, we had already discussed the case of Nicholas versus Marsland. If there is artificial lakes are there and extraordinary rain is there, then the person cannot claim that the other person is negligent. Then another defense is of unavoidable accident, which cannot be avoided despite of this fact that the defendant has taken due care and cautions. The case of Brown versus Kendall, the dogs were fighting and the person has suffered the loss. So, in conclusion, we can say that negligence is both mental state and conduct, but it is the conduct which ultimately decide the concept of negligence. There is duty, then there is a breach of that duty which is causing damage to the defendant, that is essential for the liability. And then we discussed about the various defenses like contributory negligence, act of God and unavoidable accident. So, this is all for this lecture. Thank you.